Well, happy Monday. Today is Monday, May 21st, 2022. I am Erica Savage Wilson, and I am welcoming you to the Reframe Brain, where we center brain health and unseen injuries. Listen, if you're watching us by YouTube, thank you so much for watching. If you would hit the subscribe and make sure you hit that notification bell so that you will know when we air on the first and third Mondays, that would be great. Also, like us. And if you would like to leave a comment, we're very active in the comment section. Please do so in the Reframe Brain. We'll reply to you. And if you happen to be listening to us by one of your select podcast platforms, thank you so much for listening. We also ask that you would please leave a review so that we could expand the community. I am so very excited to have everyone join today. The first few episodes of the Reframe Brain, it was me really rolling out the format of the show, sharing some really important tips on how to create an environment of healing and the connection between the brain and the heart. We've had our first person that was in the guest seat. That was Dr. Nanette Spencer on March 7th. If you haven't watched that, she's got an incredible story, an incredible insight for you. I'd say that you go back and you check that one out. Our second guest for this month of March, which is Women's History Month and Brain Injury Awareness Month, we have the incomparable Wendy Garvin Mayo. And I am going to read a little bit about the second person to grace the guest seat on the Reframe Brain. Wendy Garvin Mayo is a board certified nurse practitioner, clinical scientist, stress solution strategist, international speaker, #1 best-selling author, and certified John Maxwell trainer and coach with 20 plus years in the healthcare industry. Wendy is also the CEO of the Stress Blueprint, creator of the Nurse Wellness Mentorship and Stress Blueprint Academy, and host of the Nurse Wellness Podcast, which if you're watching this by YouTube, just click right on over there after the Reframe Brain so you can get empowered there as well. Wendy empowers individuals and organizations to optimize their health, wellness, and well-being through stress management. I would like for all of us to welcome the incomparable Wendy Garvin Mayo to the Reframe Brain community and podcast. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Oh my gosh, we are so excited to have you, particularly with your background and what I've shared with the Reframe Brain audience. For the people that we bring on as guests, be assured that they have the expertise and the background to be able to give what you will share with us in this podcast. So it is definitely our honor to have you here. And so I really want to kind of move into a little bit more about you. So if you would invite the Reframe Brain audience to talk to us about your decision to be a clinical scientist and nurse practitioner, and why the focus on stress management, Wendy.
Yeah, so thank you again for the welcome. So I've been a nurse practitioner since 2010, and my specialty is in oncology, so cancer patients. So I left the clinical setting to really transition over to the clinical scientist role, where I do cancer research full time. And when the pandemic hit, I was struggling like everyone else was struggling. At the time, I was a new mom, a new wife, and I was working from home full time and watching the news, watching this virus out there killing people, literally, and watching my colleagues, nurses on the front lines. It was terrible, and I was struggling. And what I really say is I was struggling, metaphorically wrestling with my purpose, because at my heart, I'm a nurse. I want to care for patients. That's why I'm a nurse, right? But I was home with my family, playing it safe. And I was struggling with the decision, do I return to the front lines? And I wrestled with that for months, Erica. It was a really tough time for me, because I'm the one who everyone comes to when they have problems. Everyone was calling me, what's going on? What should we do? You know, and at that time I was struggling internally with my own stress, fear. Do I return? Do I not return? But I returned to the front lines after really making a decision that I had to align with my purpose. And that one decision opened up so many doors for me. And that's why I focus on stress management, because I found the power of managing your stress, and stress can show up many ways for different people. It can show up as fear, anxiety. It can show up as limiting beliefs. It can show up so many ways, but managing your stress is so powerful. And I got to experience that power of making that decision, really getting myself under control and sharing my gifts with the world. So that is why I focus on stress management. I know the power that people can have if they appropriately manage their stress.
Wow. Wendy, thank you for first and foremost being a frontline responder, for being of service in that way. And that you talked about, there was a real struggle around what I know this is who I am at my core, but to be very honest about, you have family and family is a priority for you. Particularly, you talked about being a new mom. So congratulations in that aspect. Newly in covenant. So all of these real prioritizing things while there's a global pandemic, and what is really at the center of your heart. And as you said, there were many, many people that were calling you because remembering early on that a virus, there was no vaccine. We were washing groceries. There was just a lot of unknowns with the new and novel virus. So that you made such an incredible decision after really, really combing over all of those things. Thank you so very much. Want to say that personally, and I know from the Reframe Brain community. And as a person who is in that field, can you talk to us a little bit more about kind of what we don't see? Take us behind the velvet, velvet rope, so to speak, because a lot of what people see is very news driven. So they see people who have fallen ill. We see a lot of data and numbers, something that you can relate to intimately as a clinical scientist as well. However, take us behind the hospital doors and what nurses are experiencing beyond what cameras are showing us.
Yeah, so behind the doors, before we even go behind the doors, I want to just preface it with this. Before the pandemic, nurses were struggling with stress, burnout, nursing shortage. So this pandemic really just amplified and magnified what we are going through. And I know, people look at us as heroes, but one thing I always say is under our capes, we are ordinary people who really just made an extraordinary decision to show up and serve. That's one thing. And behind the doors of the hospital, of what you see on the news, is chaos, because you have these individuals who are humans who are dealing with their own personal issues and stressors, because being a nurse is only a piece of the pie. We are moms, we are daughters, we are nieces, we are wives. So you bring all of that with you. In the hospital, it's terrible because nurses are leaving, which increases the shortage. Like I said, it was going on before the pandemic. So nurses are working short. And as we all know, with the pandemic, hospitals are busier. Patients are coming in, people who may not have COVID, but are scared they have COVID. So, they want to be seen. And not to mention, outside of COVID, we're still dealing with heart attacks. We're still dealing with other comorbidities that people come in with. So behind the scenes, it's chaos. So what you see on the outside is not what's really going on the inside. And when I say the inside, I'm talking about the individual. So the individual who comes to your bedside to take care of you, that person is coming to your bedside with so much more than you see, than the uniform, the white jacket, the stethoscope. There's so much more under that. So it is chaotic. And it's becoming more chaotic because we still are in a shortage. We still have a huge shortage of nurses that left, that retired. Nursing schools are not producing nursing students quick enough to really keep up with that. And one thing I always say, and I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but we are currently in a national crisis with this nursing shortage. It is a crisis that we are dealing with. I'm not sure if the public knows that. And I think it's important for the public to know that, because when you go to the emergency room, or if you're admitted to the hospital, can you imagine if there are no nurses there to take care of you? Can you imagine that? And right now, there are some nurses to take care of you, but They are coming to your bedside with so much more, like I said, with that stress, with that burnout, with depression, anxiety, with our own issues that we're dealing with. So behind the curtain, behind the doors, it's a lot going on. And I know I'm speaking on behalf of nurses, but it's all healthcare professionals that are feeling this, because we want to serve. We went to school to serve despite what's going on. But things come along with that when you make that decision to serve.
Wow, Wendy. And I hope that if you're just joining us, you're tuned in to the Reframe Brain podcast. We have clinical scientist and nurse practitioner Wendy Garvin Mayo on. She's bringing us behind the doors to let us know what is happening with nurses as individuals, to see them as humans. I know we laud them and say that they are heroes, and they certainly do provide heroic efforts in what they're doing. However, they are in a crisis, and Wendy was just sharing that there was a crisis before the pandemic. And so I want to say to the audience, this is a bit of a trigger warning. We are going to be discussing some things around suicide. So if that is something that is very sensitive for you, I definitely respect you, muting for a few minutes until we move the conversation into another direction. But I really want to talk about you, Wendy, have been very intentional in saying that nurses are having their own anxieties that they're dealing with as persons, and that there was a crisis looming, or a crisis already prior to shortages. So can you talk to us a little bit about what is happening, particularly since nursing programs are not producing enough nurses to really fill the deficit that's in your field? Can you talk to us even more about what is happening with individuals as nurses as related to their health, decisions that they're making, and how many people for their own health and wellness have left the field?
Yeah, so nurses not being pumped out, like I said, is really contributing to that shortage. And nurses, so I'll give you an example. The American Nurses Association did a study, a survey basically, of over 9,000 nurses. 75% of those nurses said they are stressed out. Over 60% said they're overwhelmed. Over half of them said that the stress is impacting their emotional health. So that really speaks to what nurses are going through. And there was actually another study that was done that showed the suicide rate of nurses is 58% higher than the general public for nurses, right? And I don't think people really think about, these things, but they happen because we are human. And I know last year we were slated to have over 500,000 nurses retire. And we didn't account for the nurses who left the profession because of their mental and physical health related to stress and burnout. So we are just really just stretched thin, and nurses are actually going into retirement earlier if they can. So we are definitely just in crisis mode. And the reason I'm so passionate about this, because one, I'm a nurse, but two, it's society. It's going to impact everyone. It's going to impact you, me, our families, our friends. It's a societal impact that this is going to have, because nurses are so integral when you talk about the healthcare system. We are truly the backbones, I would say, of healthcare. Really, nothing can get done if you don't have a nurse in a healthcare institution. And right now, we're limited. We are limited. And it's a huge problem. I know, we're trying to address it, but like I said, it's not something that just happened. This is something we've been dealing with for years in the profession.
Wow. And so thank you. That is something that I know until I conversed with you, I did not have intimate knowledge of, but I can share with the audience. I had to be hospitalized back in December and stayed away from the hospital and dealt with post-concussive symptoms here very recently. And when I went by ambulance, and it was jaw-dropping to me, because they were responding to me as though I had a stroke. I was somewhat expedited in care, but to go through the ED, EC, emergency center, emergency room, however that's termed, And to see people literally lined up at wherever there was an open space, and that there were nurses that were running from one person to a second person, and maybe had people just kind of in proximity so they could get to them while in the throes of a pandemic. It was filling for me. So we have multiple crises that are kind of happening at one time. And so that's why it's really important to have someone of your caliber to come on to the Reframe Brain to talk about unseen injuries that nurses are experiencing while the pandemic is happening and while they're in care of us. And so that then leads me to the stress blueprint, because you said, listen, there's something that I need to do to show up for my community. So if you could, and I would say this to folks, Wendy has an excellent piece that is posted on Medium. I would urge everybody to read it. We're going to have the link in the show notes. You created the stress management model, SHAPE. SHAPE standing for story, hone, assess, plan, execution. I highly recommend everybody read it. It is very practical, very easy to read. Can you share the unseen impact of stress manifesting to the physical?
Yes, absolutely. So stress is really an imbalance. It's a hormonal imbalance that happens in our body. And we all talk about that, right? The imbalance of cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, right? But what we don't talk about is the imbalance it creates in our life. And in saying that, it creates a shift in all aspects of our life: mental, physical, financial. And the unseen, problems that stress can cause is anxiety, which we talked about, depression, suicide, high blood pressure, diabetes, impotence for men, infertility for women. It's even associated with some cancers, acid reflux. These are things we don't see. And one thing that I do wanted to say in terms of that is nurses, like the regular population, we have pre-existing conditions. So sometimes we have a history of depression, we have a history of anxiety, we have a history of diabetes or high blood pressure. So when we are stressed, those things are exacerbated. So stress management is that much more important. And in terms of nursing, we don't talk about that. No one is, at the nurse station talking about their diabetes or the high blood pressure or being depressed or being anxious. So everything that's going on now, these things are exacerbated. So it makes it harder to deal with when you have exacerbations, because then it's like, okay, how do I deal with this? Who do I go to? But there are a lot of unseen illnesses and things that come along with stress. And I'll just tell you a quick story. A nurse I was talking to who was saying that she was so stressed out and depressed from nursing that she used to go home every night and sit in her closet with depression. And this nurse did seek mental health services. But to hear that, and I'm saying that because we don't know what people are going through. We see them one way, but we don't know what happens when they go home behind their closed doors. And that is a problem. That's a problem. And it's a bigger problem now with everything going on, and not just with nurses, but with society. We need to connect with people. We need to be intentional about listening to people. We need to be intentional about helping people. If we can all do that, we will be so much better as a society, because those unseen things, whatever they may be for you or anyone else, can be detrimental, can be very detrimental.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to hear that someone leaves several hours of work, and in order to their safe space, their space to really kind of decompress, but have the experiences that they were having within a closet of their home. Notwithstanding if that person had children, if they were, married, had a partner, or, a fur baby. And even if it's them just by themselves, that is heartbreaking. That is something that, as you said, it is a societal issue. And so that is why I'm so very glad that you have the stress blueprint, that you have the SHAPE model that really does focus on bringing people to a place where their strategies, tools, and techniques. So if you can, before we round out this most important conversation that we have, talk to the Reframe Brain community about what the stress blueprint is and how it can be effective, not only for your colleagues, but for anybody that needs to tap into how to manage stress.
Yeah, so the Stress Blueprint is a firm that I developed. It's actually a company, and we help people manage stress. So really creating sustainable stress management behaviors. Because we all know you can do yoga, you can do mindfulness, but it's how do you make it sustainable? So we provide individuals with the tools and foundations to manage their stress. And that is the support, the accountability, and the community, because those are the three pillars that will make stress management sustainable. And as a society, we really underestimate the power of stress. Sometimes we thrive on it. And it's not something to play with because, like I said before, it can be detrimental to our mental and physical health. And the SHAPE framework that you referenced, that is our anchor, because stress management really starts with a decision. Like I said in my story, it's really making the decision that you want to live your best life. When we are stressed, we're not living our best lives. We're not showing up the way we want to show up, right? So it's important that we give that gift to ourselves. So the Stress Blueprint is there to help take people through the framework, provide you with the resources so you can live your best life. Because I'm a true believer that everyone has a gift to share with the world. So we help you unwrap that gift.
Absolutely. Well, you have been a gift to us. Thank you for allowing us to unwrap just a snippet. And you all, this is just a snippet. Wendy is a wealth of information and has great infrastructure in place to help us navigate this very unique time that we're in. And I would highly recommend that. Before we close out, would definitely want to know how people can connect with you, Wendy, and share this wonderful upcoming event that you have and the dates for people to make sure that they get in by, if you could share that with the audience.
Yes, so thank you. So you can get in contact with me by going to stressblueprint.com. Just type in stressblueprint.com. That is the website. And there is a free gift there. It's called Questions to Ask When You Are Stressed. That will help you really hone it in. And I am also having the Stress Solution series. It's a series of 7 days where we will spend together to really hone in on stress management. You'll learn about stress, learn how to deal with people with stress, but more importantly, we will craft your personalized stress blueprint that you can take and implement right after the series. And that will be on March 28th at 7 p.m. And you can go to www.stresssolutionseries.com to register.
Excellent. So if you did not capture that, listen, we got you at the Reframe Brain podcast. I want to say two things. So I am a recipient of Wendy's newsletters that come. They're really, really great, very informative. I appreciate the information. So please get on her email list. And then for this upcoming event that is March 28th, that link specifically will be in the show notes as well. If you're a subscriber to the Reframe Brain, we do a recap every Friday following the week that we have a guest on. And so you make sure that you're on that newsletter as well so you can get that recap. We do 2 newsletters a month. And so you definitely want to get tapped into what Wendy has so timely created. And the last thing that I'll say is because we did reference people that have passed away, or we talked about suicide, I want to provide the National Suicide Hotline. If you are feeling like, you may need to speak with someone, please do it. I have done it myself, and I have been very frank in sharing that. That number is 1-800-273-8255. Wendy, it has been our distinct pleasure and having you for this for this Women's History Month, for Brain Injury Awareness Month. It is an unseen injury. Thank you for bringing forth the unseen injuries that manifest out of stress. And we truly, truly appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And for the Reframe Brain audience, certainly appreciate you. And just always know and remember, we do this work one beautiful breath at a time. Have an excellent rest of your day and week. Bye-bye.
My name is Wendy Garba-Mayo. I'm a nurse practitioner and stress solution strategist, and I want to personally invite you to the Stress Solutions series, where we will discuss stress, the impact stress has on our mental and physical health, and ways to develop sustainable stress management solutions so you can live your best life. And more importantly, we will map out your personal stress blueprint. If that sounds good to you, click the link and register below, and I look forward to seeing you inside.